Hello, everyone. I'm Donna Fiducia.
And I'm Don Newen, and this is Cowboy Logic Radio.
Cowboys didn't dance, didn't wear designer shirts. When their hearts were filled with memories, their bodies filled with hurt. They would sit around the campfire and exchange a piercing glance. Back when the West was really wild, cowboys didn't dance.
From a constitutional perspective, as I speak, Mr. Mueller is undermining the Constitution. He's not upholding the rule of law, whether he's consulting with Comey or consulting with Nostradamus. I don't care if they impeach him. They'll never get 2/3. It's never happened before. Mr. Mueller wants to interview the president, and he wants to interview him under the most onerous circumstances. What is the purpose of an interview like that based on those 49 general areas? His purpose is to indict the president. Now, what's the purpose of indicting the president? To try the president and to find him guilty. What's the purpose of a conviction? It's to remove the president of the United States from office. That's the bottom line. No president has ever been indicted while in office. Not one. No president has ever been forced before a federal grand jury. Not one. No president has ever been removed from office by the United States Senate and 2/3 vote of the Senate. Not one. Mueller's purpose is to remove the president. That means one man, one jury would usurp the power, the entire constitutional power of Congress, the power to remove a president. You can indict every other public official, a judge, for instance, while they're in office, and go through the impeachment process. You cannot do it with a president. And I'm going to tell you, I've been studying this for decades. I'm studying it now. Here's the authoritative book. So what's going on now? Takes 2/3 of the Senate to remove a president. Not one prosecutor, not one jury. So my question is, from a constitutional perspective, to Attorney General Jeff Sessions, it's time to step up. To the Deputy Attorney General, it's time to pay attention. To the entire country, to all the lawyers you bring on here, this that is going on here now, these fights over whether he's going to be subpoenaed the president, whether he's going to answer questions, whether he can be indicted in office, I want people to understand that the framers never even contemplated what's going on today. They never contemplated that one prosecutor, a civil servant, a bureaucrat appointed by somebody else, would have the power to effectively remove the president of the United States. The reason why the Democrats are hanging their hat on Mueller, the reason why the media are hanging their hat on Mueller, they'll never get 2/3 in the Senate to remove this president. I don't care if they impeach him. They'll never get 2/3. It's never happened before. So what they're hoping to do is trap him in this notion of a subpoena and questioning, indict him, try and humiliate him, try and force him in front of a court, hope that they get the Supreme Court on their side, which I doubt they will, but you never know with these courts, and then get him to resign. That's their game plan. You heard it here first.
The great one, Mark Levin, and boy, is he a constitutional scholar. You listen to him, you get yourselves an edumacation. He is just wonderful. Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome to Cowboy Logic Radio. I'm Donna Fiducia.
And I'm Don Newen, ladies and gentlemen. Let me be the first to welcome you to tonight's absolutely riveting episode of Cowboy Logic Radio. Back to you, Donna.
We do need to list our affiliates, but we're running behind on time here. So why don't you give our affiliates, but pick up the pace a little bit here, honey?
All right. Thank you, Donna. I think I will. Our digital flagship network is Talk America Radio, found at talkamericaradio.us. A big hat tip to Ron Phillips. Our terrestrial affiliates, WDDQ, Talk 92.1 FM, serving South Georgia. WJHC, Talk 107.5 FM, serving North Florida. Hey, a big hat tip to Scott James and Jack Ring. And WLBD, News Talk 1330 AM and 106.3 FM, serving West Georgia and East Alabama. A big hat tip to our good friend Steve Graddick. There you go, Donna. Back to you now.
I'm out of breath, not from listening to you.
Oh, my God, the turkeys don't fly. They're dropping like wet bags of cement on the sidewalk.
Thank you, Les Nessman. You know what? I'm just tired watching Donald Trump. I'm tired watching him.
Turkeys don't fly, Donna. They are hitting the concrete like wet bags of cement.
For all you who don't know what he's talking about, watch WKRP in Cincinnati's Thanksgiving special. It's priceless. It really is, especially if you've ever worked in radio.
Well,
seriously,
if I remember correctly, they come up with this. Promotion.
Like a promotion, yeah.
Okay,
radio
on
promotion.
Thanksgiving Day, and what they're doing is they're throwing turkeys out of a helicopter.
But they don't
right?
realize turkeys don't really fly too well. What brought that up? It's not Thanksgiving.
I have no idea. Just something that popped into my
so weird.
cranium.
I don't know. Austin
Thanks,
Powers.
Donna. It may have been that kind of a voice that initiated that train of thought.
Austin Powers come to mind for me this week. Mole, mole, mole. There could be a mole in the Trump administration, in the Trump White House. We'll see what happens with that. Many people are saying
huge, bigly.
It could be extremely bigly.
It could be bigly on a bigly scale, ladies and gentlemen.
In the meantime,
bigly,
bigly
stuff.
Can Donald
could be
Trump?
bigly.
Ricky!
It could be a big mole. The mole could be huge. I'm talking people who want to come back to the United States
Zip
because
it.
this mole is
Zip
so
it.
huge and bigly.
Zip
we will get tired of creating such big moles.
No, we'll get tired of winning. By the way, folks, I do call him Ricky. He calls me Lucy. That's why I yelled at him. Ricky, stop.
See,
Can I get?
So hold on a second, Donna. See, when children get in trouble, their parents usually refer to them by both their first and their middle name.
But not to you. I don't say Donald Leland Newen.
No, you just go, Ricky!
Junior.
Ricky! Sit down, Ricky!
Let's review. I'm speechless.
Hold on, Donna.
Your face
Hold
is
on
too
one
funny.
second. Hold on
What?
one second. Ladies and gentlemen, I want you all to know that I have successfully distracted Donna Fiducia to the
Only
point
for a
where
second.
she has no idea what she's talking about.
Now I do
next.
know what I'm going to talk about.
What are we going to talk about next,
I want to
Donna?
talk about what Donald Trump did this past week at age 71 when the mainstream media kept saying, oh, he's too old. He can't do this. He's got problems.
Are you
he can't
talking-
stand
Donna.
the stress of being president.
Donna, you must be talking about when he kidnapped 3 people from North Korea.
Yes, absolutely. At 3 a.m. in the morning.
When he kidnapped them.
And then later on that night,
You listen to the mainstream
he was in
media, that's what it
Indianapolis.
sounds like. Kidnapping.
You know, this is how the mainstream media contorts themselves. It's kind of like the guy in Deliverance after they found him when he was like 2 miles downriver with his arm behind his head. They contort themselves
Now I'm going to ask you where that came from.
because they contort themselves to try.
tragic.
It was, but
That
it's
was
pretty
terrible.
I thought it was
That
pretty
happened
funny.
up in like Rabun Gap, Georgia.
Yeah, they filmed it in
And
Georgia.
you're mocking when somebody's arms are bent.
He got a
all
pretty
the-
mouth.
Oh.
No, but seriously.
Let's not go there.
Okay, so Sarah Sanders is up there. This is last week, and it's just this mental picture that I have now, and it's stayed with me for almost like 4 or 5 days. They get up there and they go, Sarah, well, first of all, President Trump lied because he said that the North Korean or the Korean Americans that were held hostage in
Actually,
North
they
Korea.
were Americans.
Well, they're Korean Americans.
Let's get it right, Fiducia.
Well, because everybody's hyphenated now.
Americans.
They're Korean Americans.
No, they're not. They're
I know,
Americans.
I know. Okay, but the 3 Americans of Korean descent that were being held in North Korea, well, it wasn't really Barack Obama's fault because not all, you lied, Sarah Sanders, because not all of them were held captive since Obama took office. Well, you know what? So 2 out of the 3 were. And the other one might just be Otto Warmbier, who was killed. He was tortured and killed. You jerks. And they take North Korea's side. Through the past couple of weeks and months when all this has been going down, they've actually said that the real adult in the room is Kim Jong-un. I mean, seriously? All you have to know is the average reporter now is like 27 years old. I'm sorry, I might sound like my mother, but you don't know what the heck you're talking about at 27. You don't know what the heck you're talking about at 37.
Stormy Avenatti.
I'm sorry. Yeah, Stormy
Avenatti.
So anyhow, Trump goes to meet them at 3 a.m.
Stormy-
And then the next thing...
Stormy Avenatti.
Come on, can I get to this?
Yes, go ahead.
Ricky!
Yes.
The next thing that they say Trump does is it's a photo op because he has to go and meet these American of Korean descent hostages that were released at 3 a.m. in the morning. Does that sound like Bo Bergdahl in a rose garden ceremony with their Muslim parents? Saying salam, whatever the heck it is in Arabic? I'm sorry. No way. Obama had this whole darn thing choreographed. Trump does it at 3 a.m. in the morning. How is that a photo op? Who the hell is up at 3 o'clock in the morning to watch? Unless you're in L.A., and even then it's midnight. Okay?
I was.
Yeah, that's true. We
I
did
was,
stay up.
and then I felt like crap all day the next day when I went into work because I only had like 3.5 hours of sleep. Although I would challenge any of these pukes in the mainstream media to hold the schedule that Donald Trump holds.
Well, then,
at their youthful ages.
Absolutely. Then he has a meeting at the White House with automobile dealers. Then he has some other problem that he talks about with healthcare and saying that they have to reduce the price of medicine. And then what is he doing? Then he's off for a fundraiser or a rally or whatever.
Let's call it a shindig.
That night.
Donna, call it a shindig.
A shindig, whatever. But then, folks, this has to be killing the mainstream media because everything he's done so far, with the exception because, in my opinion, the Republican rhinos aren't helping him, getting rid of Obamacare, but he's trying to dismantle that. Everything he said he's trying to do, he's doing, okay? And then you've got nuclear non-proliferation of the North Korean peninsula, possibly some sort of peace treaty between North and South Korea. May I say to the millennials, please look up the Korean conflict, quote-unquote conflict. It was a war. I don't care what anybody calls it. I think 50,000 Americans, I need to check on that, but if memory serves, 50,000 Americans were killed in that conflict. It's been going on since the 50s, and he does this without firing a shot so far. I mean, it's true. It could be possible that maybe it's not going to work. But you know what? So far, so good. And then what happens? In 2009, the Nobel Peace Prize gets awarded to Barack Obama for his, quote, extraordinary efforts to strengthen international diplomacy and cooperation between peoples.
What does that mean?
What the hell does that mean? The Norwegian, need we say more, Nobel Committee announced the award on October 9th. God forbid that was John Lennon's birthday. October 9th, 2009, citing Obama's promotion of nuclear non-proliferation and a new climate, quote unquote, in international relations fostered by Obama, especially reaching out to the Muslim world. So he essentially didn't do squat. I'm sorry. He didn't do a darn thing. And he gets a Nobel Peace Prize. And what happens? Everybody says, well, maybe Trump could get a Nobel Peace Prize. And everybody's going, oh, that can't happen. Even though Trump is actually doing something. Let's go to the campus, folks. And let's reach out and find out what the kids on campus actually think.
Today we're at UC Santa Cruz talking to students about their opinions on President Trump's role in ending the Korean conflict and if they think he deserves a Nobel Peace Prize. Let's see what they have to say. Or some of Trump's supporters have said that President Obama won the Nobel Prize in 2009 and they think President Trump has done more and so he deserves the award for the global peace that's been brought about as a result of the seeming end of the conflict. Do you think there's any validity to that claim?
No. That's all I gotta say about that.
Do you think he deserves the award?
Hell no, that's a joke.
Okay.
Like, what has he done for peace?
Okay.
Yeah, nothing.
No. I feel like he just thinks that he deserves many awards, and that's just stupid.
I think that's crap.
I don't really think so.
I don't know. It's just too good of a prize for him to have credit for.
Do you feel like President Obama deserved the award when he got it in 2009?
Yes.
And what did he do to deserve it?
Was it for his education, push on education, or was it for the Obamacare?
Do you think President Obama deserved it?
I think so. He did some good. He really did a lot of good work. Like, it gets undermined and stuff. But
What kind of diplomatic stuff comes to mind when you think of him winning the award?
well, there's much to talk about. Give me some examples, Bob. Nothing pops up in my head right now.
Obama? I don't know. I mean, I'm not even sure what he did to get the award.
Okay.
Like, to be honest. Like,
Do you think President Obama deserved the award when he won?
Yeah, he does. I feel like he actually wanted to make change instead of just sitting around.
Like what changed in your mind?
I don't know. I have to look at that more.
I would be really frustrated if he got a Nobel Peace Prize.
Okay.
I feel like Obama was a really great diplomat, and Trump has really staked a career on not doing that.
Got it. And what do you think Obama did to deserve it in 2009?
I mean, I'm forgetting exactly what the political events were at the time. I was in high school back then, and so, but
Yeah, I think if Obama won it, why wouldn't he win it, right? Because I don't know why Obama won it. Even, I like Obama, but I don't think there's any real legitimate reason why he should have won it.
Look, do you think the tough talk worked? He talked tough, and then within a year of his presidency, the Korean War is over.
Not a lot of people like getting talked to like that,
It seemed to work, though. I mean, the conflict ended.
I don't know. So we have no idea what they're thinking, to be honest.
Do you think that strong rhetoric played any role in North Korea coming to the table and denuclearizing?
I wouldn't say so. Oh, I think that for him to take credit is really just posturing on his part.
Students, you need to go to your cry closets and your safe spaces. Donna, it's terrifying to me as a middle-aged guy that these people someday are going to be calling the shots in this country. We are absolutely doomed with college liberal puke mindset.
I really think they ought to make professors actually get a real job at some point. I think they need to get rid of tenure. And I actually think, because we don't have a draft, that we need to raise the voting age up to 21, back up to 21. It was lowered to 18 because at a draft, you had to go and die for your country. I agree with it. And at the time, the drinking age was also 18. They raised the drinking age up. They're raising the age to possibly own guns up to 21. You know what? They damn well better raise the voting age back up to 21. In fact, 30 would be even better, but I'll take 21.
Well, the thing is, ladies and gentlemen, you just listened to college students. Where were they? UC?
I don't know. Somewhere in California.
Southern Cal.
That was campusreform.org. They do wonderful work. Campusreform.org. Look them up, folks.
Yeah, but the thing is, you've got
Amazing.
that mindset outside of communist province of California.
Yeah.
You got that mindset out here in West Georgia.
You have it
And
at
it's
every
pathetic.
college campus.
It's absolutely pathetic.
We've got a possibility of the Korean Peninsula being united after 70 years. You have the 3 Americans of Korean heritage released. Unfortunately, it was too late for Otto Warmbier, and we do send our condolences to his family. I can't imagine what they're going through. You've got Trump speaking with Kim Jong-un. Now, he's going to speak in Singapore. It's coming up in June, okay? Then, what else has he done that he said he's going to do? He's fighting like hell to build that damn wall, and the Republicans are fighting every step of the way. But then, on Monday, yesterday, lo and behold, the embassy was moved to Jerusalem because that is the capital of Israel. Netanyahu addressed the opening of the Israeli embassy. Secretary Mnuchin was there, Ivanka and Jared Kushner, and of course the great one, Mark Levin, was there. I ought to note here, not one Democrat attended. And what really annoys me is many of these Democrats are Jewish. What the hell is wrong with Chuck Schumer? He is an embarrassment. He is a total embarrassment.
Let me tell you what's wrong with Chuck Schumer and all these other liberal Jews.
They're so
that don't support Israel.
Political.
Politics is their religion. Politics, the Democrat Party, the Democrat agenda comes before their own faith.
It's ridiculous.
It is sad.
It is sad. It is really sad. Over 50 Hamas-inspired...
hold on a second. Just like Maxine Waters, everything that Maxine Waters has ever done since she was elected to the House of Representatives is to only foment a black cause. That woman is black before she is an American. Nothing else matters to Maxine Waters but race. Now, can you imagine, Donna Fiducia, if a white person had that point of view?
No. And unfortunately, that is what's happening in reverse in South Africa. And thank God Tucker Carlson is starting to highlight that. In South Africa, they're killing off white people just because they're white folks. So you've thought apartheid was bad. Do you think this is okay? Everybody talks about slavery 200 years ago in America, which was eradicated. Nobody's talking about slavery going on right now in so many countries in the Middle East and also in Africa. And white people being killed off in South Africa, and they're being told by the president of South Africa, it's okay, we're not going to prosecute you if you do it. And then what happens? They kill these farmers, they rape their wives, they've crucified little children, and then they say, well, why don't we have any food? Because we're killing the farmers and wonder why we can't have any food. They're having trouble with water in South Africa, and they refuse to take water purification systems from Israel because they're Jewish. It's unbelievable. unbelievable what's going on and getting no headlines. And all you hear about is Black Lives Matter here in the United States. Give me a break. I'm sorry. It's not about race. It's about responsibility, and it's about having equal rights, irregardless of what you look like. And it ain't happening anywhere but in the United States. Sorry, I get off my soapbox now.
I'm Don Newen, ladies and gentlemen, and I don't ever get a chance to speak because I have a co-host named Donna Fiducia.
You can go now.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. What's the name of this radio show?
Cowboy Logic Radio.
And are you a cowboy?
I'm a cowgirl.
I didn't think so.
I can barrel
Donna.
race better than you, Don Newen.
Hey, I have a suggestion for Maxine Waters, because I wanted to stay on that subject while you were moving around to something else. Mm-hmm. I'd like to suggest that Maxine Waters move away, denounce her U.S. citizenship, move to South Africa, where she can hang out with a bunch of people that have her same views. Kill Whitey. Kill Tea Party. The Tea Party can go to hell. Remember when she said that, Donna?
Yeah.
Maxine Waters, move to South Africa where you would be embraced.
Well,
here's the thing, ladies and gentlemen. There are people that keep electing Maxine Waters. What the hell is wrong with you people?
And Hank Johnson. And Hank Johnson. Remember,
right,
Guam's going to tip over?
What a mental midget
right.
Hank Johnson is.
But if you say that, you're racist because they're black.
Well, I'm not racist, and anybody knows me knows I'm not racist. The thing is, these people are racist. Maxine Waters is a racist.
Absolutely.
Hank Johnson is a stupid racist.
The people who yell racism are the biggest
Sheila
racists
Jackson
there
Lee is a racist.
But let me get back
Kamala Harris is a racist.
Oh, absolutely. Let me ask you this.
Cory Booker is a racist.
Let me ask you this. If Donald Trump was into photo ops, why wouldn't he been at that embassy when it was opened in Israel? You know what?
I think it's because
he has
Melania
priorities.
was sick.
Exactly. Melania Trump was hospitalized with kidney problems. We wish her well. We send her all our love. And I'm sorry, but it looks to me like Donald Trump does have priorities, contrary to what the mainstream media would say. And the other thing we were talking about, as far as campus idiots are considered, the reason why our kids are being brainwashed and wondering why they can't get jobs out of college. By the way, college debt is up like to $1 trillion, close to that. 39% of colleges have blank percent.
Save us, Bernie Sanders.
Yeah, really.
Save us.
39% of colleges have blank percent of Republican professors. Give a guess. According to OneNewsNow.com, nearly 40% of colleges have 0% Republican professors. According to this, 40% of the colleges they looked at have 0% professors. And it's unbelievable. They looked at
what a great place to put your money, ladies and gentlemen.
They looked at almost 8,700 full-time professors with PhDs, surveyed by the National Association of Scholars, the NAS. It was
Cowboy Logic Radio doesn't suck like colleges. Donna, who do we have coming up next? We have got a hell of a show for you, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, we have Trevor Loudon, author and filmmaker, and he is just wonderful, talking about all this, talking about Maxine Waters and all the rest, all the commies and liberals and
racists.
Well, really, in the government that he wrote a book about. And then Dr. James Mitchell for the last hour. You've seen him all over the Fox News Channel, Fox Business, all the news channels. He is the person that really basically looked at what was going on with Khalid Sheikh Mohammed and enhanced interrogation. His big thing he said on Fox News Channel, it's the CIA, not the PTA. Dr. James Mitchell and Trevor Loudon coming up next on Cowboy Logic Radio.
Hi, thank you for listening. My name is Ron Phillips, and I'm the owner and operations manager of Talk America Radio. It is with great pride that I offer you this 24/7 stream of some of the finest talk radio programming in the country, but I need your support. We are a listener-supported network. That means we need your help to continue to offer the quality programming you're hearing right now. If you're able, please visit talkamericaradio.us and click the Support Us button. Your donation will go a long way in helping us continue to share the American voice. Thank you.
Hello, and welcome to the Chronicles of Lower Education with me, the Fed Up Professor. Guess what? I found a beam of light in the murkiness of academia, where the ability to reason has decayed into the lazy logic of confirmation bias, which means interpreting facts or phenomena such that they prove and confirm your own pre-existing belief. According to the Higher Education Research Institute, 88% of American professors are left or far left leaning. So our students get way biased exposure to leftist orthodoxy. That's a Greek word meaning correct opinion. Orthodoxies are dangerous because their certainty about the righteousness of their worldview leads to punishment, silencing, marginalization of anyone with opposing viewpoints. Here's an example. One of my colleagues stormed into class the morning after Trump's election and demanded that anyone who voted for him get the hell out of her classroom. Several did, and they reported her to administration. Nevertheless, that spring, she won a Professor of the Year Teaching Award. True story. But here's some hopeful news. A group of rock star academics from both sides of the spectrum are alarmed at the Academy's failure to foster actual critical thinking, and they founded an online organization called Heterodox Academy. Heterodox is Greek for different opinion. Their mission? To improve the quality of research and education in universities by increasing viewpoint diversity and constructive disagreement. What a concept! New members affirm that they agree that university life requires people with diverse viewpoints and perspectives to be free to challenge one another, and they pledge their support of viewpoint diversity in their fields, universities, departments, and classrooms. Yeah, I joined. I'm a counter-revolutionary, baby. But until further notice, I shall remain the fed-up professor. See you next week.
This is Don Newen, co-host of the Drive Time Sit Rep. Join me as I call into my Intel analyst, Denise Simon, for my daily situation report, or Sit Rep. The Drive Time Sit Rep. Check talkamericaradio.us for more information and show times.
You're listening to your local news source, WLBB, News Talk 1330 and FM 106.3. Welcome back to Cowboy Logic Radio. Our very special guest this half hour is a good friend of ours who we've had the pleasure of meeting with and socializing with, and then also basically talking business with big time, and that is Trevor Loudon. Trevor is an author, an activist, and now, of course, a movie producer, and he stars in his movies as well. Basically has some great documentaries about the enemies within, and that is the huge book that he wrote a few years ago. And folks, it's a coffee table book. It's about as thick, 2-3 inches thick. It is a heads to tails authority on the communists and progressives in the U.S. Congress and the Senate. And it's just amazing how these people get away with it. And of course, Trevor, you are from New Zealand, so you've always said what happens there, you can see what happened to New Zealand. You're afraid it's happening here in the United States. Trevor Loudon, welcome back to Cowboy Logic Radio.
Hey, look, it's great to be on. Thanks, Donna, and hi, Don.
How you doing, buddy?
Good. I hope you get to say a few words today if Donna lets you.
Well, you know, Donna's going to
catch up with both of you.
Yeah, Donna's going to let me speak a little bit. I'm going to elaborate and add some colorization.
That's
Maxine
so
Waters. That was not a racist comment.
Oh, I think it was.
All right, I'm going to add a little bit of colorization regarding Trevor's book. Trevor, the book that we actually bought from you the day we first met you a few years ago, 4 years ago, is dog-eared. The spine is almost broken on it. Pages are folded back. It looks like a textbook from high school or college, minus all of the childish drawings that take place in those books. Now, the reason that I bring that up is, ladies and gentlemen, Trevor Loudon's book, The Enemies Within, is a research book. And that's exactly what Donna and I use it for. There, in my opinion, Trevor, and you correct me if you think that I'm wrong on this, but it's not necessarily a book that's designed to be read from cover to cover. It's not like a novel.
Yeah.
This is a research tool that we can use, and anybody can use this to start understanding what has happened with real documentation, supported evidence, hours and hours and years of research that Trevor Loudon has put into this book. The thing's like 700 pages long. And I'm here to tell you, Trevor, there are 3 locations in our home where that book can always be found. One of those 3 locations, either down here in the Cowboy Logic Radio studio, where we use it as a reference tool when we're on the air, on our coffee table in the living room, where we sit and read it when we're just relaxing, or one of my favorite places, any of our 6 bathrooms, that we use that as constitutional creating reading room material.
It's like Lethal Weapon, Trevor, where Danny Glover gets stuck on the toilet and has to be pulled off.
Hey, I get in there. Let me tell you something. I may be telling you people a little bit too much here, ladies and gentlemen, but when I get in the porcelain throne room and I've got Trevor Loudon's book, Enemy Within, you got to send the cavalry in after me, because I get in there and I start reading this thing. Next thing I know, both my legs have fallen asleep.
To send Mel Gibson after to save you.
All right, well, let's get down to some serious stuff. Trevor, I don't know if you could have received a better endorsement of that book.
No, it's excellent. You always give me a great endorsement, guys.
I think it's the theater of the mind. That's what makes radio so great.
You know a book is good, ladies and gentlemen, when you're reading it on the porcelain throne and your doggone legs fall asleep. You get up and you can't walk.
Trevor, let's start, and I want to get into your new project, talking about the enemies within the churches, the communists there, that's for sure. We'll start with the Pope, but that's another story. We'll get to that in a minute. But just this past week, Maxine Waters went off the rails at a recent House debate when Pennsylvania Representative Mike Kelly had the audacity to suggest that the country needed to shift focus from what divides us to what unites us. And then she went into the whole thing, I'm an African-American woman, you don't know what it's like. And for some reason, I guess they were talking about what happens when you go into a car dealership. And she goes, I know, what happens when you go into a car dealership. And I'm like, give me a break here. Tell us the lowdown on Maxine Waters and her communist roots.
Well, look, Maxine has been involved with the Communist Party USA, the pro-Soviet communists, who are now pro-Chinese, by the way, since the 80s, or before that. There were several communist fronts. She's had several communists on her staff, including Mike Marassi, who was her chief of staff, who was a hardcore Maoist. She's had members of Democratic Socialists of America. She's worked with the Nation of Islam. She's worked with the Communist Party. She's worked with various Maoist groups. She's a hardcore anti-American Marxist, Leninist communist. She hates everything good about America. She only sees the dark side of America. She wants America to be torn apart. Yeah, she wants America to be torn apart. She is a revolutionary. So whenever you hear Maxine Waters speak, you've got to filter it through that lens. That woman is not there to help America. That woman is basically there to cause a revolution, a total revolution that installs a workers' dictatorship, a communist dictatorship. That's what she is. I've got no hesitation in saying that woman is 100% communist.
I don't understand.
A Democratic member of Congress.
How does someone get in Congress? America. She obviously couldn't pass a background check, could she? I mean, do they have any kind of criteria?
Guess what, Donna?
What?
There are no background checks whatsoever to serve in Congress or the Senate, even to serve on the Homeland Security Committee, the Armed Services Committee, even the Intelligence Committee of the House of Representatives. No background checks whatsoever. Do you think America's enemies might be aware of that little weakness?
Yeah.
Well, here's the thing: the way our republic was founded, the American people and the voting process is supposed to be the background check. The problem is you've got a bunch of uneducated, watered-down mental midgets that are strolling into the voting booths or being drugged in there, sometimes more than one time. Sometimes they're not even alive.
Or they're illegal.
Yeah. And so,
Well,
the system itself is broken, and that's one reason somebody like Maxine Waters has even held office in this country. I mean, I'm offended, Trevor Loudon, that Maxine Waters, in my opinion, considers herself to be African American first and American second. That's offensive.
Well, it is. It's completely disloyal. And how can you take an oath to uphold the Constitution when you don't believe in what it stands for? You don't believe in American exceptionalism. You don't believe in the American system. And Maxine Waters doesn't. She's a covert Marxist-Leninist. And I say there's at least 100 members of the House and 20 members of the U.S. Senate, probably a few more actually, who couldn't pass an FBI background check to drive a school bus, which is really lucky because there are no FBI background checks in Congress. And as you said, Don, the media, the people are supposed to vet the candidates, and the media is supposed to help them do that. But when the media is completely run by the left, how's that going to work?
Well, maybe what we need to do is install in the process a background check. Sadly, and I blame the American people, and I include myself in the American people. I blame us for putting communists and Marxists in our House of Representatives and in our Senate because we vote with zero education for the most part. I mean, my God, all you got to do is look at Maxine Waters, and you have to wonder about, the people in her district that she represents. What is the level of IQ of those individuals?
And what has she ever done for them in her, decades in office?
And
Nothing.
Maybe it's not even the level of education, guys. Maybe it's that they don't give a damn. Maybe they don't care.
Well,
maybe a lot of the American voters just don't care.
Well, too many of them don't, but this has always been the case, like in the American Revolution, about 3% actually fought in it and about 20% supported it.
Right.
So it is nothing new that most people just really don't take an interest in the government of the country that supports them. You think about it, and I'll call out a lot of Christians on this, because you hear a lot of church people, Christians, who will say, "Oh, look, we don't get involved in politics. It's a dirty game. We just stay in our church, and we don't get involved in politics." Well, here's this: you have been given the greatest country the world has ever seen. You have been granted the greatest freedom and prosperity and wealth and human history, and you think you have no responsibility for maintaining that. None whatsoever. Well, how damn irresponsible can you get? Most of the globe envies America, would love to live here, would love to enjoy the benefits of it. Yet you've got millions of Americans who think they have no responsibility whatsoever for maintaining the greatest country in the world that's given them all the benefits known to man. You say, I say to Christians, is it a Christian thing to do to let your neighbor starve to death? And they say no. I say, is it a Christian thing to do that when your town is being flooded to stay home and refuse to help to sandbag the town? And they say, well, of course not. Well, how is it a Christian thing to do to let your country go to hell in a handbasket and not lift a finger to do anything about it?
Exactly.
So that's the attitude of too many Americans. The Americans have had it too damn good for too damn long, and they think it's always going to be that way, and they've got no responsibility for maintaining it.
And we have the soft underbelly, unfortunately, right now.
That's completely wrong.
I really think we're going to turn into the Holy Roman Empire with the bread and circuses if we don't watch out, if we're not already there. Let me reintroduce you, Trevor.
Well, it's pretty close.
Exactly. We're talking to Trevor Loudon, author of the book The Enemies Within, Exposing the Communists, Socialists, and Progressives in the U.S. Congress. You can find him at trevorloudon.com. He's an investigative writer, activist, and movie maker. I mean, it's unbelievable. The book, The Enemies Within, again, folks, is a reference tool. You just look up, and it's footnoted, up the wazoo. You look up whoever you want, you can find out what you want as far as people in the Congress, and it will amaze you as to how many have communist ties. So, Trevor, let's go on to your new project, The Enemies Within the Churches. And I as a kind of Reformed Catholic, tell me about the Pope, because to me he's just a socialist.
Well, the Pope is a Marxist.
Oh, great.
He's a Marxist. He used to, when he was a young man, he used to hide Communist Party literature for his Communist Party friends, so the authorities didn't find it. He used to talk about how he couldn't wait each week till the Communist Party newspaper was delivered so he could read it. He was heavily involved in liberation theology, which is Marxism with a Catholic veneer, and only a veneer, that's all. And I think he was also at the major conference in Venezuela in 1957 that the KGB set up, the Soviet KGB set up to introduce liberation theology to Latin America. It was a KGB program. The communists did no good in Latin America because the Catholic Church was so hardcore against them and everybody was Catholic. So to get round that, they had to invent this thing called liberation theology, which was Marxism with a little bit of Catholic window dressing. And Pope Francis has been a major advocate of that all his life. He's been a Marxist from the word go. He's a Marxist today. He's pushing the Marxist agenda from the Vatican right now. And hundreds of millions of Catholics are in either a state of confusion or are being sucked into this.
I mean, I have friends in New Jersey that sit there and say to me, well, he's the Pope. And I'm like, he's a human being. Look at his background. You can't take that away from him. And I love the hypocrisy of him telling us to open our borders when the Vatican has, a wall that's, a gazillion feet high all the way around it.
Yeah. Look, bring in 10,000 Middle Eastern refugees, put them in the Vatican, then you tell us, then you take the moral high ground and tell us we should do the same.
Yeah.
Well, here we have a pope who recently was denouncing or watering down. He made a comment about the devil or hell. Yeah, there is no hell.
Yeah, well, that's old fashioned.
Okay.
Yeah, that stuff.
Yeah,
that's we don't have to worry about that now.
So,
but here's the thing, guys.
He's decided.
Here's the thing. He consulted a close atheist friend of his. I'm sorry.
He's got communist ties. He's got a lot of atheist
I probably unknowingly have some atheist friends. I probably really don't care. But I'm not the freaking Pope.
No.
If you're the Pope, you don't hang out. Birds of a feather don't flock together. You don't hang out with atheists and then turn around and be the Pope. It's
I know.
Hey, but it is good to know that there is no hell.
I'm betting it's fairly likely it's not a conservative atheist either.
Oh, probably not.
And you know what gets me? It really goes back to the hippy-dippies of the 60s. There's no responsibility. Anything goes, and don't worry about it. That's really what it boils down to, and these people are running the ship now, which scares me, because then you have these guys like David Hogg, who are the next generation, and they're even farther left. I mean, we're doomed if we don't wake up.
Well, see, this is the situation. The Catholic Church has now got a Marxist pope. The Catholic Church has got a civil war going on between the conservative factions and the Marxist faction. The mainstream Protestant churches in America, the Episcopalians, the Methodists, etc., have long been taken over by Marxism for decades now. They are just preaching pure Marxism from their pulpits. But the evangelical churches were, until recent times, relatively clean. They're relatively pure. They were teaching, traditional
clean to our guns
Christian
and our
doctrine.
religion.
But there are Marxist groups like the Gospel Coalition and people like Russell Moore and Rick Warren and the Hybels couple out of husband and wife team out of Chicago, who are pushing Marxism full on to the young evangelicals. They're sending them to Palestine to be indoctrinated by the communist terrorists there against Israel. So now you've got a whole generation of young evangelicals, the people that used to support that elected Ronald Reagan and supported Israel are now supporting Palestine and Bernie Sanders. The churches will be completely unrecognizable in 10 years if this trend continues. They are being subverted like you would not believe.
It drives me crazy. And what you just said is they send them over there to see what it's like. I really think that's what the United States government needs to do. Once you get out of high school, if you get out of high school, if you're a certain age, do what Israel does. Have a couple years of mandatory national service and let these people travel around the country and, in fact, around the world. Let them spend a week in Venezuela or North Korea and see how much they want to kiss the tarmac when they come back. This is what drives me nuts. Because I was one of those people. I went to a Moscow Music Peace Festival when I worked at a rock and roll radio station. Just the name of it is insane, right? And it was right after the Olympics in Moscow. I want to say early 80s. And we go there. We couldn't find food. It was when Gorbachev was there. Glasnost. Everything was, hunky-dory. They loved Gorbachev. In fact, Rush Limbaugh used to call him Gorbasms every time the press would talk. That's what gets me now. About how anti-Russia they are, but, because Trump is in. But Russia was the greatest thing since sliced bread back then. And I wanted to kiss that tarmac when I came back in because I was there only a week. I couldn't find food. I knew they were going through my stuff. You could just tell they were watching you. It was, and when you come from total freedom, you don't think that can happen. You just take your freedoms for granted.
And that was in one of the more liberal periods of communism.
Exactly.
Yep.
When it was relatively, as good as it ever got, put it that way.
Trevor Loudon, let me ask you this, and those of the guests that appear on our show, like yourself, that do this often, all of our faithful and beloved listeners know we do not follow any type of a script. So I'm going to take you down a path that we haven't talked about. You and I haven't actually talked about it recently at all, and that is, the term deep state. Can you give the listeners, in layman terms, your interpretation of the deep state?
Well, look, the deep state is many things, and it's a very broad definition. You've got the globalist types from the Council on Foreign Relations, etc., who've been running things through the State Department for eons, and that's part of the deep state. You've got the permanent bureaucrats, that's another part of it. You've got the intelligence services, which have all been penetrated by the globalist types. But what we have to understand is that under Obama, we were in a Marxist takeover. We were in Czechoslovakia in 1948. So Obama was able to populate the bureaucracy, the Justice Department, and the court systems, and many other parts of American life with full-on Marxist revolutionaries. So the deep state is, in a large part, Marxist. It is communist. It is hell-bent on destroying America and destroying President Trump, who's probably America's last hope right now. So we have to understand the deep state is a revolutionary thing that wants to bring down the Constitution and completely destroy America as we know it. That is what the deep state is in its essence. There are many other aspects to it. There are many people involved in it who are just trying to protect their jobs and have a liberal agenda, etc. But at core, it is driven by Marxists and revolutionaries, and that is why it's not going away fast. And the only way you're going to get rid of it is to basically purge them from the administration. You've got to get serious about internal security, reintroduce loyalty oaths, background checks, and purge bureaucracy of these people.
It's something I never thought I'd see.
I think the FBI and the CIA are lost, to be honest with you. I think they ought to be
the leadership is, but there are still great people right through the CIA, the FBI, and the intelligence agencies. But, what do you do? What did they do in Czechoslovakia in 1948? The communists, and as part of a left-wing government, not a communist government, but a left-wing government, were given the security services and a couple of other portfolios, and they used that to put their people at the leadership of all the key agencies, and that's exactly what Obama did. So you've got to decapitate everything from HUD to CIA, to the FBI, to the Agriculture Department, you name it. You've got to purge the leadership of all of those organizations. And by the way, to make it, you might as well, any organization that's not constitutional, like the Agriculture Department or the Education Department, just get back to the Constitution. Get rid of the whole damn thing.
Yeah.
The deep state will dissolve if you don't have all these cesspools for them to live in.
Why can't Trump do it, though, quickly? You know, it seems like he was trying to play along. I think the deepness of the deep state surprised even him.
I think so, but I think he's, having people like John Bolton, he's getting good people around him now. And that was the big worry when he first got in. The bad guys were in charge of personnel. Well, that's changing now, and I expect to see some serious fight back and some purges on the way.
Trevor, tell us about the enemies within the churches. You're going to have a couple 2 to 3 minute clips of these, and you can find them on YouTube.
Well, no, that's a separate project. We're doing a whole series of short 2 or 3 minute clips on various Marxist, Muslim Brotherhood sympathizers and communists standing for public office, for Congress or the U.S. Senate. Like, we want to expose, like, Tammy Baldwin, the senator from Wisconsin, for instance, or Bobby Rush, the congressman from Illinois, or Keith Ellison, the congressman from Minnesota. We want people to understand they are voting for Marxist and Muslim Brotherhood supporters and anti-American activists. So we're soliciting funds now. We've made several of these things. We're going to start releasing them soon. And I think people will watch them. We encourage people to share them. And I think even these 2 or 3 minute long clips will shake Americans to the core. They have no idea who they're electing.
Well, and the beautiful thing about a 2 to 3 minute clip, Trevor, is that even a liberal can pay attention that long, and you're targeting not only conservative individuals that are going to absorb what you do and have interest in it, but if a liberal watches it, you're not going to lose them because of their short attention span. One other thing I want to share with the listeners is that we are grateful and privileged to have had Trevor allow us to be able to play these 2 to 3 minute clips. We're going to start playing them when they come out on our breaks in between the segments on Cowboy Logic Radio. So you'll be able to listen to them. You can also go to Trevor's website. Trevor, how can people, and we got to make it quick, we got less than a minute, how can people support you either by following your great work, but more importantly, if they've got some spare change and they would like to contribute to what you're doing, how do they go about doing that?
Go to enemieswithinthechurchmovie.com. enemieswithinthechurchmovie.com. You could flick some dollars there, or go to my daddy website, trevorloudon.com, and donate to. There's donation spaces there as well to my KeyWiki website, etc. So, yeah, enemieswithinthechurchmovie.com is a big project right now.
Okay, and it's Trevor Loudon, TrevorLoudon, folks, trevorloudon.com. Trevor, thanks so much. Keep up the great work. You are the voice in the wilderness, but I think a lot of people are waking up. Trevor Loudon from New Zealand, very much on top of what's going on here in America, folks. Please support him and check out his great work at trevorloudon.com. Trevor, thanks a lot for joining us here on Cowboy Logic Radio.
Thanks, Don and Donna. Always a pleasure.
All right. And we'll be talking to James Mitchell after the break, who helped develop the CIA's enhanced interrogation program. Kind of sums up what we've been seeing going on the last week or so. It's coming up next on Cowboy Logic Radio. Hello, everyone. I'm Donna Fiducia.
And I'm Don Newen. And this is Cowboy Logic Radio.
Cowboys didn't dance, didn't wear designer shirts when their hearts were filled with memories. exchange a piercing glance. Back when the West was really wild, cowboys didn't dance.
Welcome back to Cowboy Logic Radio. I'm Donna Fiducia, along with Don Newen. And our very special guest this hour, and we have him for the whole hour because just a half hour is never enough, is Dr. James Mitchell, who helped develop the CIA's Enhanced Interrogation Program and served as interrogator from 2002 until President Obama shut it down in 2009. He interrogated 14 senior terrorists at CIA black sites, including Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, the mastermind behind 9/11. And Dr. Mitchell also co-authored the book Enhanced Interrogation, which I have right here on my desk. You can hear me banging around. Enhanced Interrogation: Inside the Minds and Motives of the Islamic Terrorists Trying to Destroy America. He served 22 years in the Air Force, retired as a lieutenant colonel, 7 years at the USAF Survival School in Spokane, Washington. And in addition to his experiences as an interrogator, Dr. Mitchell is also a law enforcement trained hostage negotiator, and he served on a hostage negotiating team. James Mitchell, Dr. James E. Mitchell, welcome back to Cowboy Logic Radio.
Hey, thanks for having me on. It's always a pleasure.
All right, I'm going to start this off, Donna, because when it comes to Dr. James Mitchell, his book, I am like the biggest fan that he could possibly have.
How many times did you read it?
I've read it once.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot of time in the bathroom.
Well, and that's where I read most of it. Was sitting there on the white throne.
As it should be, I think.
Kept him.
But hey, listen, there's no distractions. That's the place to read, in my opinion. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I am suggesting strongly, if not insisting, that you get a piece of paper out and you write down the following title: Enhanced Interrogation: Inside the Minds and Motives of the Islamic Terrorists Trying to Destroy America, by Dr. James E. Mitchell. Now, we were privileged enough to have received a signed copy of this.
Yeah, I was going to say, do you remember what you put in this, James? I mean, it's scary how you signed it.
I actually don't recall how I signed it for
They
you.
there really are monsters.
Yeah, and that really
There really are.
All right, now here's the thing, ladies and gentlemen. And I'm going to tell them a little side story here because we've got you here for the whole hour. We met Dr. Mitchell in South Carolina in January at the South Carolina Tea Party Coalition Convention. He spoke early morning on the first of the two big days of this convention. He spoke on Saturday morning at about 10 o'clock. At noon, we broke for lunch. And all of the speakers and Donna and I, who were emceeing this thing, went up to this little private room where the speakers could kind of get away from the masses and be able to eat lunch. And I see Dr. Mitchell sitting at this table. A couple of other people were there, but he was obviously sitting by himself, and it was an opportunity for me to walk up to him and say, and I remember exactly what I said, Dr. Mitchell. I said, "Sir, I was hanging on every syllable that was coming out of your mouth during your briefing for the past 30 minutes. And I truly was. And you and I had a brief conversation, and ladies and gentlemen, we're talking to the individual that was waterboarding Khalid Sheikh Mohammed. That's who's on the show with us right now. And I'm sitting there at a lunch table talking to this man, and he was gracious and humble and willing to speak with a cowboy that had horse poop in his boots.
I think you cleaned it out for that.
I did not.
Okay.
Well, actually, I think you've mistaken me for somebody important. is my response to what you're saying.
Well, and your comment right there validates exactly what how I just described you. And at that point, when Donna and I had to leave to get back down to the convention because you were done for the weekend, pretty much.
Seeing the darn thing.
We're up there 8 hours a day. Well, I basically said, "Hey, I don't know what you're doing later on, but if you want to join Donna and I for dinner, we're going to be leaving at the end of this, end of the day, and we're going to go find some place to eat. You want to go?" And here's what you said. I don't know if you'll remember this. You said, "I really enjoy coming to these conventions because I like to speak and I like to give my briefing, but I don't know anybody here. I don't have anything to do the rest of the time." And so the long and short of this story, ladies and gentlemen, is basically for the rest of the weekend, it was like the Mod Squad hanging out together. It was Donna, Dr. Mitchell and me. And I'm sitting there going, well, what am I doing in this group? You know?
Oh, then when Dr. Pry came along.
Yeah, and then Dr. Pry and Claire Lopez and Trevor Loudon all joined in, and then it became a real spook fest.
We're going, oh, my God.
But
I'm just
Dr. Mitchell, I will forever remember that weekend that we were able to spend with you and the fact that you were so gracious. And Donna and I had an absolute blast riding around in our personal car with the guy that waterboarded Khalid Sheikh Mohammed riding in the back seat of our car.
Oh, thank you. Those are very, very kind words.
I felt weird sitting
I don't
in the
think
front
I'll
seat.
ever be able to live up to the hype.
Well, I guarantee you, you spent all of last week on the various TV shows. You were on Fox and Fox Business, and I'm sure many others. You've been doing radio interviews all weekend, I'm sure. I guarantee you, I am unique in my introduction of you.
Yes, absolutely. Which brings us now to the reason why you are in such high demand, and that is Gina Haspel. Now, as you say, Dr. James Mitchell, there really are monsters. I'm so sick of the double standard. I'm so sick of the political correctness inside the D.C. swamp. I'm watching Gina up there getting interrogated, and I really do want your thoughts on this whole thing as far as whether or not she should be the CIA director and what they're putting her through.
Well, I'll echo some of the things that the agency released and put my own personal spin on it. I know her. I've been in meetings with her. She's probably the most well-liked person in the building. She's had 33 years of experience with the CIA, most of that undercover, 7 operational assignments. She's been shot at in hostile situations. She's been through a coup d'etat. She has had a handful of senior positions. She is very well-liked. And here's the thing that I think your listeners probably need to know about her. There has been no other person who has worked their way up through the ranks and been in all of the operational positions that she's been in who is as qualified as she is to lead the agency. She is the best and brightest minds in the intelligence community, whether they were political appointees for Obama or not, to see her as being the most qualified person, if not one of the most qualified people that has ever been nominated. And she would, if it had been nominated by Barack Obama, easily have cleared the nomination. In fact, John Brennan, who was up to his eyeballs and more senior than her, he was up to his eyeballs in that program, was easily confirmed by Obama's Senate. So they're disingenuous when they point to the role that she may or may not have played in the enhanced interrogation program, because here is the fantasy. The fantasy is that she ran that program, but she didn't run that program. She just didn't run it. She wasn't the person in charge. I know the person who was in charge. I talked to him about 3 days ago. It was a man. He was my boss. He ran that program. She did not. And so it's unfair and untrue to try to hold her responsible for what happened in that program.
Well, I know that John Brennan even likes her, and I'll be honest with you, I'm not a fan of John Brennan, okay, at all. And like you say, Brennan was up to his eyeballs in enhanced interrogation. Brennan thinks that Gina Haspel is well qualified. You know, I guess as somebody who was in the New York media for almost 30 years, there really is a glass ceiling. I don't care what anybody says. I'm not one to go around and complain. It just makes you work harder. And I sort of get that feeling about Gina Haspel. As a woman, she had to work all that much harder.
Well, that's what I hear. I hear a lot of cheap talk about putting the qualified women in positions of power and influence. But when it comes right down to it, the Democrats don't want to do it. You know, they do not want to appoint the best qualified person. If it's a woman, they would rather see a political hack who's a man get appointed if that person is going to be more easily manipulated than the woman. You know, there's a lot of talk about moral compasses, too. You know, in 2002, Feinstein said, after she was briefed about the interrogation program, that we're going to have to do some things that historically we have not wanted to do in order to get the information we need to protect ourselves. And Senator Rockefeller, who was in the Senate at that time, when he was asked if we were going to have to render Khalid Sheikh Mohammed to a third country to be tortured to get the information to protect us, he said nothing is off the table. So their moral compasses were pointing in the same direction that Gina Haspel's moral compass was pointing at that particular time. And that direction was specifically at protecting American lives. And you should have someone as the chief of the CIA, as the director of the CIA, who is apolitical like she is, who will tell President Trump, I'm stammering because what I want to say is where the bear shits, and will not
bleep that out.
Okay. I'm sorry. We'll tell President Trump what he needs to know and what he should know because she's not vying for another job in his administration. She's the best qualified person that should be picked up.
All right, let's go back to your comment about the Democrat Party, your comment about women, your comment about the Democrat Party's view on women and the glass ceiling. And I want to move to somebody that was absolutely appalling to me last week, and that's Kamala Harris. And the treatment of Gina Haspel by this disrespectful puke from California. And that's my description of her. I was offended for Gina Haspel at the treatment that she received, especially by Kamala Harris, the sweetheart, the darling of the Democrat Party right now. Now, I've read your book. You and I and Donna have had hours of conversation since we first met you in January in South Carolina. The interrogation process that you used and the techniques that you used that you describe in this book, quite frankly to me, when I used to watch World War II and Korea War videos and movies and Vietnam movies, pales in comparison to what torture truly is. And quite honestly, I didn't see any torture taking place in what you wrote in your book and you described in your techniques. What I saw was conditioning that you created and perfected over hours and hours and years of interrogating these people, building a not necessarily a trust with them, but a comfort level with these people where they would actually speak with you on a level that was useful for you to obtain information. And more than anything, putting them into positions much like we train our horses. And I'm not comparing Maxine Waters and Kamala Harris, a horse, to a human being. But if you want to get something or someone to do something, you make them want to do it. And that's what I read. That's what I got out of your book. You were not torturing these people when you were waterboarding them. Do people enjoy being waterboarded? No. But you were not torturing them. And when you would put people into pressure point positions, you were against using inanimate objects to enhance that position, unlike some of the other contractors that were in there. These people were not tortured.
Yeah, the person that actually used the dowel behind the detainees' kneecaps was a CIA employee. He was a government employee, and he was eventually fired for repeatedly doing that. More important than whether I thought it was torture, and more important than whether you thought it was torture, is whether or not the Department of Justice, the highest law enforcement agency in the land, thought it was torture. During one of the run-ups to deciding whether or not the enhanced interrogation program, constituted torture, he demanded, in fact, that he be waterboarded before he would give an opinion about whether or not waterboarding was illegal, constituted torture, or violated our treaty obligations. And so I waterboarded him, and I waterboarded a lawyer for the CIA, a female lawyer for the CIA. In fact, I've waterboarded almost as many lawyers as I have terrorists, and he got up off the water. Yeah, he got up off the waterboard, and very shortly after that, opined officially that waterboarding did, as it was done by the CIA, because certainly you could do it in a way that it constituted torture, but as it was done by the CIA, it did not constitute torture. It did not violate our treaty obligations, and so I think that the shifting of the moral high ground has led people to over-focus on what was a relatively trivial, over-focus on the technique instead of the process of the way that those interrogations were done.
Can you talk a little bit about the difference of what you feel? Is it the time that they're actually waterboarding that makes that fine line between real torture and just trying to, enhance interrogation?
Well, any stressor really has, if I can remember, I think about 4 dimensions: frequency, intensity, duration, and ambiguity. So you could convert something like, not that I'm advocating it, please don't take me out of context, but you could convert something like the way the CIA, relatively benign way the CIA did waterboarding into full-blown torture if you used more water, you did the long pours more often, if you did it for longer, right? Frequency, intensity, duration, and you made it more ambiguous so the guy never knew when you were going to come into the room and snatch him and put him on a table. And those kinds of things can actually produce a tremendous amount of stress. But the thing to remember is that the way the CIA actually waterboarded people, and there were only 3 of them that were waterboarded, and it was completely discontinued by the end of, by, say, May, June of 2003, was not as intense as the Department of Justice's legal guidance would have allowed it to be. A lot less water, a lot less frequency, a lot less intensity. So I think people over-focus on waterboarding because what's important is not the waterboarding. What's important is the process where you shape the person's cooperation.
Exactly.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Did it work? I mean, it seems like it did. We haven't had...
Well, it didn't with KSM, right, Dr. Mitchell?
Yeah.
Well, waterboarding itself was not the sole interrogation technique that worked with KSM. Walling and sleep deprivation had a much more profound effect on him. But what we can't say, and we'll never know, is whether or not his experience on the waterboard kept him from backsliding after he started to cooperate, right? So there's this fantasy that what happens is the person is strapped to the waterboard and we're yelling, "Where was Osama bin Laden?" or some other thing, and the person either tells us or doesn't tell us. Well, that's not what we're focused on when that's happening. And so what we're trying basically to do is shift the person's priorities so that he's looking for some small way he can voluntarily answer the questions in a truthful way in order to avoid it. And then we reward them. And we reward them by discontinuing that and by improving their other conditions. And then over time, you don't have to use EITs at all. And for KSM, we don't know whether the total package, including waterboarding, kept him from backsliding, his experiences. But we do know that it required the addition of walling and sleep deprivation for him to begin to make efforts to cooperate with us.
It's amazing, and this is in a very simplistic analogy, the similarities between what you were doing to get terrorists that wanted to kill and want to kill Americans to do what you'd like them to do, and the same thing Donna and I do when we're training horses.
It shouldn't be a surprise. It's based on behavioral psychology.
Exactly. And the thing is, when we're working with horses, we apply pressure or we do something that they would rather. Anytime anybody rides a horse, they're doing basically what you did at black sites. We're not waterboarding horses, but, you apply pressure with your left leg, you're going to move that horse to the right because he wants to move away from the pressure. And if the right is, moving a horse to the right is where you want to go, getting information about future attacks or what could be done to help save American lives with KSM or any of these other high-value detainees, you move them, you apply pressure to move them into the area where you want them. Is that a decent analogy?
Yeah, what you really want to do is sort of kickstart the process. They come in with a set of priorities when you first meet them, and they've already sorted through how long do I think I can hold out? What do I think I can give away? What can I say to distract these people? KSM was a little more arrogant than most in that he basically, when I asked him, I told him I wanted information to stop operations inside the United States, he told me soon I would know that I didn't. If I just waited long enough, essentially an attack would occur, and then I would get my answer at that time. But we weren't willing, because he had another catastrophic attack in the works that possibly involving nuclear weapons. It turns out it didn't, but the intelligence suggested it might. So what people tend to do is over-focus on a single technique. Now, no one would be surprised if they went down to the local police station and they watched an interrogation, and that initially the criminal tried to lie to the person who was interrogating them, and then they became a little more truthful, and then eventually they told the truth, and then later they regretted some of the true things they said, and they tried to retract them, or they said some things early on that were lies, and they wanted to clarify that they were lies. And what tends to happen with the CIA's enhanced interrogation program is that when they release documents, they release a document that captures one slice in that timeline, and everybody over-focuses on that tiny slice instead of realizing, of course, the interrogators knew that they lied, and of course we knew that they were going to retract some things, but what we're interested in is the overall conditioning process to get them to the point where they begin to provide actionable intelligence.
And that really is what the mainstream media is doing right now. They pick and choose what they want. They tell half a story to get what they want into the minds of people, whether it's correct or not. And in my opinion, it's about 90% incorrect, because that's about all they do is totally negative information about Trump and whatever he's doing. And that really falls in line also with enhanced interrogation, because to me, interrogation is one thing. Torture's another. Torture's like what happened to Otto Warmbier, where you pull out his teeth and you stick them back in the wrong places. Torture is where you put people into a cage and submerge them underwater till they drown. That's torture. Okay? And this is what annoys me so much with these politically correct, holier than thou idiots in the DC swamp that all of a sudden are forgetting that 9/11 even happened. We're talking with Dr. James Mitchell, who helped develop the CIA's enhanced interrogation program and served as interrogator from 2002 until President Obama shut it down in 2009. And he's co-author of the book Enhanced Interrogation: Inside the Minds and Motives of the Islamic Terrorists Trying to Destroy America, which is the bottom line.
So we've got about, I think we're going to have about 3 minutes on this break, ladies and gentlemen. It's a typical Cowboy Logic break. You have a task that you have been assigned. On this 3-minute break, go buy the book. Donna, read the title of the book again. Go to Amazon.com and buy this book.
Enhanced Interrogation: Inside the Minds and Motives of the Islamic Terrorists Trying to Destroy America.
And when we get back on the other side of this break, ladies and gentlemen, I am expecting each and every one of you to have purchased this book. We will be right back.
Let me talk to you, black people. When you vote for blacks and put them in office under the banner of the Democrat Party, please explain to me what black people get as a result. This was not a nap that we have been taking. We are in a coma. You know what the interesting thing about pensions is? That's today's money given to people who ain't doing nothing for you today. Get off that black Democrat tit that they've been sucking on. Your country is being stolen from you, and the promise is being stolen from your children, and they're telling you it's all right while the rest of the world is trying to lap us. Well, why are we doing so poorly? 2 words: teachers' unions. Are you kidding me?
Black Man Thinking, Monday nights, 9 p.m.
This is Denise Simon. 18 hours a day, I live in a world as an intelligence analyst. Intelligence analyst. Intelligence analyst. Intelligence analyst. Intelligence analyst. What I find is reprehensible. What I find is terrifying. What I find is treasonous. 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 The mainstream media has completely failed the American people. 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 Join me for the Denise Simon Experience every Thursday night at 9 p.m. Eastern.
Donald Trump came to Washington vowing to drain the swamp and make government work for the American people. But the swamp creatures in D.C. aren't going down without a fight, and the deep state is determined to overturn the election and keep their gravy train rolling. In these turbulent times, it's critical for patriots to stay engaged and be prepared to defend this president. You can stay up to date on Trump's battle to make America great again by listening to America First Radio with Jim Dawes each weeknight at 10 p.m. Eastern on the Liberty Feed.
The deep state wants to stop Donald Trump. Now, Jerome Corsi's powerful new book, Killing the Deep State, rips the lid off the secret war against Trump. Killing the Deep State reveals the shocking plot by the FBI, CIA, and NSA to end the Trump presidency. It's already a #1 Amazon bestseller. Newsmax says you can't ignore Killing the Deep State. Get it at bookstores everywhere or check out the free offer. Go online to deepstate411.com or call 800-406-0921.
You're listening to your local news source, WLBB, News Talk 1330 and FM 106.3. Welcome back to Cowboy Logic Radio. I'm Donna Fiducia, along with Don Newen, who's behaving. You are behaving.
It's the new me, Donna.
No, it's not.
It's the new me.
James Mitchell has heard you puke your name.
Yeah, but I'm not going to puke my name tonight.
At the South Carolina
Not tonight, Donna.
Convention. Okay.
Back to you, Donna. Back to you, Donna.
Well, we did have the pleasure of meeting Dr. James Mitchell at that South Carolina Tea Party Coalition Convention. He is the co-author of the book Enhanced Interrogation: Inside the Minds and Motives of the Islamic Terrorists Trying to Destroy America. He developed the CIA's Enhanced Interrogation Program. You've probably seen him all over the Fox News Channel and Fox Business Channel last week because of this goings-on with the confirmation for Gina Haspel. And he's obviously really somebody who is the go-to person as far as information on that is concerned. And again, President Obama shut down the Enhanced Interrogation back in 2009. But from 2002 to 2009, Dr. Mitchell did work. And I guess, well, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, KSM, as he's affectionately known as, is one of the three that you were able to interrogate. And you served 22 years in the Air Force and retired as a lieutenant colonel there, including 7 years at the U.S. Air Force Survival School in Spokane, Washington, among many other things. You have quite a resume there, James. Quite a resume.
All right, but before we get into the meat of this thing, I want to ask Dr. Mitchell something. Now, Dr. Mitchell, last weekend, you and I spoke, well, I think it was Friday that we spoke, and you said that that you had a point that you wanted to make about one Whoopi Goldberg. Now, the funny thing about this is that you also qualified the statement that you're about to make with the fact that you are neither unemployed nor are a shut-in, so you don't watch The View. Well, neither do Donna and I. I don't think I've ever seen it. The only time I've ever seen anything that has to do with The View is when somebody plays a ridiculous clip from The View. And so I totally agree with you. I am not unemployed, never have been, quite frankly, nor am I a shut-in. Therefore, I don't have the time or the desire to watch The View. But Whoopi Goldberg said something that you kind of took an issue with, and you have figured out a way to solve her mental midget comment. And what was that?
Well, essentially, she said that she thought that neither President Trump nor Dick Cheney had been waterboarded, and it was her opinion that they needed to do that. And in the past, she's been critical of the efforts made by the CIA to keep Americans safe. And so my initial response was to just simply disregard it because, frankly, I don't care what she thinks. But then after giving it some thought, I thought, well, maybe she can show us the way. It's entirely possible that the next time that there's there's some credible intelligence of a catastrophic attack in the United States, possibly involving the death of hundreds or thousands of people, she can put on her rubber boots and go over to the Middle East in some dangerous place and do the interrogations. And I'll stay home, safe with my family, and criticize her for a change. And I doubt that she would take that challenge. She had sort of thrown down the gauntlet for Trump to get waterboarded. And as a psychologist, one of the things I felt compelled to point out is that strong-willed, strong-minded men like Trump do not think like Whoopi Goldberg. And it's entirely possible that President Trump could be exposed to the waterboard. And instead of thinking, oh, this is horrible, he might think, oh, this is harsh. This is exactly what we need to move these terrorists along, and it actually backfire on her. So given that waterboarding is off the table and not likely to be on the table in the foreseeable future, I just felt compelled to say something.
That's pretty darn funny. I mean, if Obama could get rid of it just like that, Trump could put it back, reinstate it, I guess.
They changed that's the fear. They changed the law, actually, so that now those things are illegal. That isn't going to happen. That's why I told you that it's a smokescreen. It's really just a smokescreen. And the truth about Whoopi Goldberg is that she's just posturing. She's doing what I call value signaling. She's standing in front of a bunch of admirers, preening and telling them how much more morally superior she is to people like us who have spent our lives trying to keep Americans safe. Mm-hmm. And I just felt like, I don't want to hear that.
You know what really gets me is they get up there on their soapbox, and unfortunately they do have a pretty good soapbox and get heard. And it's almost predictable. You know they're going to hate Trump. They still hate Dick Cheney. I mean, 20 years later. I mean, this is unbelievable. And then you get up there and, who was it? Alyssa Milano at an anti-gun rally while she's got armed bodyguards behind her. I mean, the hypocrisy is so overwhelming. It's not funny. But Dr. James Mitchell obviously been all over the news channels this past week because Gina Haspel is still being grilled as the CIA director designate. Now, I got to tell you, I'm not a fan of John Brennan. John Brennan, though, has endorsed Gina Haspel. And John Brennan, according to you, is up to his eyeballs or was up to his eyeballs in enhanced interrogation techniques. So they know
it not works. According to me, according to him.
Oh, according to him, okay.
All I'm doing is citing what he said.
He actually said I was up to my eyeballs.
No, he didn't. That's not quite what he said. But he said he was involved in the program. He was in a senior position when it was there.
But not Gina Haspel. And that's so ridiculous. I mean, so obviously.
Because it's not about the enhanced interrogation program.
Yeah.
It's about trying to prevent President Trump from being successful and trying to deny him the choice that he's making. And I think there's more than a dusting of gender bias. Yeah. You know, she is immensely qualified, and it's got to be scary for some of those folks who, although they talk a lot about wanting women in positions of power, do not want them in actual positions of power. I think they need to quit being hypocrites and appoint the best person regardless of sex, right? We're not looking for some affirmative action female person appointed as the director of the CIA. She is the best qualified person in 70 years that's come up through the ranks. She should be appointed not because she's a female, but because of the merits of her capabilities and her skill.
There was a story this past week, I'm not sure where it came from, but Khalid Sheikh Mohammed apparently has responded to the torture aspect and has information on Gina Haspel. I saw it on the Fox Business Channel. What could he actually say? I mean, you said she wasn't even involved with this.
I said she didn't run it. I'm going to let them to explain what her involvement was or wasn't. I think I don't think he could say anything about her. See, he's responding to the press that's out there that his attorneys are, either they're letting him watch voluntarily or information they're sneaking him in, and they believe the same thing that other folks have believed. There was that story where Rand Paul said he wasn't going to support her because she had been present when Abu Zubaydah had been delirious and tortured. And, of course, it was based on something from my book, which actually they misquoted it, taken out of context, and they had to eventually retract it because, A, it wasn't her, and I made it clear in the book that it wasn't her, and I went on Fox News eventually and said it wasn't her when they continued to insist that I had implied that it was. And their defense really was, well, he used the pronoun he, and you used it multiple times in that section, and we thought you were just trying to protect her identity, which is, no, I know the difference between a man and a woman. I'm a little old, but I haven't forgot that yet, And if I had meant it was a she, it would have been a she and not a he. And so they ended up, ProPublica ended up having to retract it, and so did a number of other major news organizations that went along with it. And that sort of hit piece gets out there, generates a lot of critical press interest for those who oppose her, and then the retraction doesn't even make a bleep on it.
Yeah,
so
it's on like page 40 afterwards.
Absolutely. And so what happens is folks like Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, who get little bits and pieces of the news, probably believe she did run that program when she didn't.
All right, hold on a second. I got to bring up something. Dr. Mitchell, given the fact that you were an Air Force officer, I'd like to get your thoughts on this. And this to me, at least as a civilian, really is troubling. Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, it's either Khalid Sheikh, it's the Cole bombing guy.
Nashiri.
Okay. If I'm not mistaken, he is represented, his defense lawyer is a JAG officer.
Right, and that actually is appropriate.
How does that individual, as a veteran, as a former officer yourself, how do you take that? I could not do that. I could not try and defend that individual and walk in there in my uniform. I could not do it. Last week, and I don't mean to cut you off on this, but there was a gentleman that called into Mark Levin's show last week. It was absolutely so profound that Levin was silent, which is a rarity. I was moved driving into work listening to this. This was an officer that was working at the Pentagon on 9/11, and he happened to be walking out of the bathroom when the plane struck the side of the Pentagon. He was 70 feet from it. He was burned over 100% of his body. He spent years in a burn center. He said, with regard to the enhanced interrogations and waterboarding being the big topic of discussion right now, he goes, that absolutely pales in comparison from chlorine baths where they're scrubbing your body that has been burned 100%. He didn't have a clear spot on his body. And it is beyond me how an individual that is wearing a uniform can defend people that do these kind of things to our country. Disagree with me if you want, sir, and help me understand why this is the way this needs to be, because I have a major problem with it.
Well, I don't. It's that JAG officer's duty to provide the best defense that he or she can. And just like it was my duty to do as much as I could do to protect Americans' lives, it's his duty to do the best that he can or she can to defend the detainees. I don't have a problem with the military providing lawyers. I have a problem with us paying tens of millions of dollars to private lawyers who simply want to drag out the process and file motion. They haven't even got through the pretrial motions yet. Yeah. The reason that is going on still is, remember, back in 2006, shortly after they were moved to Guantanamo, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed and the rest of the people who were involved in 9/11 who were working for him pled guilty, and they were awaiting sentencing at a military commission hearing. And Barack Obama, because he wanted to try the case in New York City and take a victory lap, Barack Obama and Holder, his attorney general, set aside that confession. And what happened in Khalid Sheikh Mohammed's mind is he thought, I was willing to martyr myself. But now Allah has told me to continue the jihad in the American system. And so he's been doing everything he can to drag this out and to obfuscate and to make it difficult to do. And I don't blame the JAG officer. I blame Barack Obama and Eric Holder, who set aside their initial confessions because they would have already been sentenced and they would have already received whatever punishment they were going to receive. So in this particular case, that person's doing their job.
All right, and so he is obligated to perform the duties that he's performing. He hadn't accepted this voluntarily.
He gets assigned. Mostly they get assigned. Wow. Right. So maybe they volunteer, maybe they don't. But, I was a military officer. I don't get to choose what things I want to do or I didn't want to do. If my boss gave me a lawful command, it's not like you're a civilian. You have to salute and say, sir, I object to this. And I've actually had this happen. I've actually said, I don't want to do this. And my boss said, I'll take that into consideration. Now, report back to me when you got it done, Great. And I don't blame those folks. Those are good Americans who are doing the job that we're asking them to do. I do have some questions about the other attorneys, though, because it wasn't the JAG officers that snuck my photograph into Khalid Sheikh Mohammed's cell so that he would know who I was, specifically in terms of my true name and those other things and other details about me. It was the other attorneys using attorney-client privilege to put information about the CIA and the CIA folks who were undercover to take in there so that the bad guys would know precisely who we were.
Thank you, though, for explaining that to me, because I have been exceptionally hard on this JAG officer, not even knowing who he is, because I can't rationalize doing what he's doing. And you put it into good perspective for me, and I do stand corrected on my views on the guy. And thank you for doing that. Let's talk about Dianne Feinstein for a second.
Because like you said, back in 2002, she said historically she didn't want to do this kind of torture, quote unquote. And Senator Rockefeller actually said that Khalid Sheikh Mohammed should be taken possibly to a third country because nothing is off the table. And then Feinstein turns around and exposes you.
Yeah, well, why are we surprised about the hypocrisy of some people? When I complained about this to my lawyer at the time, she said, "You're working for the CIA. Put on your big girl panties and take it like a man," which I thought was an interesting mix of metaphors. But aside from that, I mean, you got to wonder about the men in her life. Aside from that, I just want to be sure about the quote. What Feinstein said is that we may have to do some things that historically we have not wanted to do. And I think that was an acknowledgement that we're going to have to get information to stop this upcoming catastrophic attack. And we may have to do things that in a different moral landscape we wouldn't choose to do. And we're in that different moral landscape now, right? So all of this histrionics about Gina Haspel reinstating enhanced interrogation or President Trump going to waterboarding, all of that is off the table and it's just a distraction. They just don't want President Trump to succeed. That's part of it. The second part of it is Gina Haspel represents a very real threat to those people who are deep state in the intelligence community who are perfectly okay with using our intelligence apparatus to spy on American citizens and to promote political causes, because she won't put up with that crap. It won't happen. And so I can see and understand why they object to her. I just think that their objections should be highlighted and pointed out, since they're putting petty political partisan desires over keeping Americans safe. You want the most qualified person in that position so that they can save American lives.
Now, Feinstein and the Dems, in my opinion, are standing arm in arm, more so with terrorists like KSM. And, they took North Korea's side against Trump. They kept saying, who's the adult in the room when all this started to come down? It's amazing to me how, as Michael Savage says, liberalism is a mental disorder. It's Trump derangement syndrome right now. I think maybe you psychologists should add that.
It's amazing to me how liberal Jews will side with Iran, where if they stepped into the country as a non-political figure, they might last 3 or 4 minutes in existence.
Because
it's amazing to me.
They're not really religious. Talk a little bit about, if you would, Dr. James Mitchell, about Osama bin Laden and some of the information you were able to extract, how they were showing that these terrorists were trained by Iran. See, this is the whole axis of evil.
Well, one of the when they raided his compound, they pulled out a bunch of documents, and it was like a treasure trove of intel. And one of the documents outlined, it was sent to al-Baghdadi, and he was saying, you need to quit killing Shia because Iran I'm paraphrasing now, Iran has been helping us. They provide explosives, they provide safe passage, they provide training. And so for a long time, the superficial analysis was that the Iranians were not helping al-Qaeda or ISIS because of the because of the conflict between the Shia and the Sunni, right? And it turns out that the enemy of my enemy is my friend in this particular situation. The two of them were working together to attack the United States and to undermine democracy in that area. And they'll go back to fighting again, or they would have gone back to fighting again when that was resolved, and trying to kill each other. But for the time being, it made more operational sense for them to help al-Qaeda. And ISIS was kind of getting in the way of that. And so Osama bin Laden was trying to dial that back.
There were 5 ISIS leaders captured this past week. 0 from the mainstream media, really.
Well, they're not going to cover stuff like that.
I mean, I really feel the work.
Stormy Daniels is the big thing right now.
I know, it's true. And her lawyer.
Hey, let me ask you this, Dr. Mitchell. If you were able to waterboard Stormy Daniels.
No, I'm not even going to go there.
Come on.
I am not even going to go there.
Or Michael Avenatti.
Yeah, her lawyer.
Stormy Avenatti.
Please
I'm not even going to go there.
Shut him up.
Okay, all right. We had to bring some lightheartedness into this.
No, I agree with you. Poke fun all you want. But
well, I'm not sure. I mean, you used a saline solution, if I'm not mistaken, during waterboarding, right? And Stormy Daniels, I believe, is full of saline.
Oh, you guys.
All right. So let's move on to something of more substance.
Yes, please.
There was a fascinating part of your book, and again, ladies and gentlemen, before the show's over, Donna's going to give you the name of the book. You can find it on Amazon. We encourage, if not insist, that you buy this book. But there was a fascinating part of this book, many fascinating parts. But when and I'm going to set you up for this so that you can describe this for the listeners. You were sitting with KSM in one of your interrogation moments, and you basically hit him with the question, much like a parent might hit their kids. If the parents went out of town one weekend, left the kids at the house, the kids had a party and destroyed the house, and basically you said to KSM, the hell were you thinking?
What were you thinking? We were past the enhanced interrogation, and we were just talking with him, trying to understand his worldview, right? And so Doc Jessen and I were sitting with him, and one of us asked him, well, what were you thinking? What did you think Americans were going to do when you attacked the World Trade Center and you knocked those buildings down? I mean, did you have any idea at all what would happen? And he said, well, first off, they were delighted and surprised when the World Trade Center collapsed because they had not expected that to happen. And when it did happen, he thought that was a sign from Allah, that it was a beacon, the smoke and the fire and the lamenting of the people who had died and who were damaged and that were grieving for their lost loved ones, was a beacon that would draw other like-minded jihadis to join the fight and attack America while we were still reeling in that particular thing. And then he kind of looked. He told me, he said, "But what I expect you would do is that the American presidents would treat it like all other previous presidents had. That you would view it as a law enforcement matter. That you would turn it over to the FBI. There would be this year-long investigation. You would have trouble identifying the specific people who were involved in the attack. And by the time you figured out that it was us, that it was me and my cohorts, we would have had time to pull off that second catastrophic attack and fly planes into the tallest buildings in Los Angeles, Seattle, and Chicago." And then he put his hands on his face up next to his cheeks, and he looked down for a second. Then he looked back up and he said, "How was I supposed to know that cowboy George Bush would say he wanted us dead or alive and invade Afghanistan to hunt us down?" And what he meant by that was that, and this is the genius of what George Bush said, George Bush didn't tell the FBI, "Go out and find the individual who did this so that we could punish him." He said, "That was an illegal act of war. If you are a member of Al-Qaeda, you are as guilty as the person who did this." And he attacked all of Al-Qaeda. Mm-hmm. And Khalid Sheikh Mohammed was convinced that if Bush had not done that, then he would have had time to pull off that secondary attack.
Well, I venture to say that if Obama were president, that would have happened.
It was a perfect way to end the Cowboy Logic radio show this week, ladies and gentlemen, that Cowboy George Bush brought down the wrath of the United States military on terrorism. And they couldn't even turn on their cell phones without having a missile or a bomb suppository go right up their sphincter.
KSM might have been the only person on the planet that didn't know you don't mess with Texas.
There you go. Now, before we close out, Donna, Dr. Mitchell, with all sincerity, because I read your book and we've spoken to you numerous times, I want to thank you for doing something you didn't necessarily want to do and that you struggled with making your decision. Ultimately, we're very comfortable with the decision you made, and that was do whatever you needed to do. Be called into service again to protect American lives. And the thing is, what people don't understand until they read your book is that the time that you spent, the years that you spent serving America in this capacity probably paled in comparison to your 20-plus years in the military, because, A, you were away from your wife of almost 50 years now for many, many, many months in which you couldn't speak with her, and you were in literal S-holes. You were in terrible conditions that you had to work and live in. And, sir, thank you.
Thank you for saying that. And I would remind folks that I wasn't the only person there. You know, there are a lot of brave men and women in the CIA and the other intelligence communities and the Department of Defense who have made sacrifices every bit as great as I have. And America is safer because of these patriots.
And we salute you all. Dr.
Well, and we're speaking
Mitchell,
with one of them, sir.
Absolutely.
And the rest of them didn't ride in the back seat of our car. So you are close to us.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. James Mitchell, author of the book Enhanced Interrogation: Inside the Minds and Motives of the Islamic Terrorists Trying to Destroy America. Again, he helped develop the CIA's Enhanced Interrogation Program. I'm sure you're going to be seeing him on all the news channels as long as this Gina Haspel confirmation hearings continue. And James, just before we started this interview, we were talking off the air about Voltaire, so I'm going to end with a Voltaire quote. "It's dangerous to be right in matters where established men are wrong." I think it kind of sums up what's going on right now inside the D.C. swamp. Dr. James Mitchell, thank you so much for joining us here on Cowboy Logic Radio.
It was an honor.
And we will see you guys next week, same bat time, same bat channel. And in the meantime, God bless America.